Good morning to you, one and all. Many of you, most of you, all of you, I hope, would have been with us about a week ago, exactly round about now, when I was elected to serve as the President of the General Assembly at its 68th session. We're in this sort of gray period whereby I'm elected, but I'm not the President per se. There is still President Jeremy, and he will be President of the General Assembly until the 16th of September. I take over formally at the start of the new session, which begins on September 17th. So whenever people say President something, especially with my name in the same sentence, it still takes me by a bit by surprise. And I hope I never get used to it. Otherwise, I'll just see you in the corridors and wave, which would be fatal. So, I don't want to go down that particular road. When I was elected last week, I did outline a theme for the session, including the general debate. And just to recap, that theme was the post-2015 development agenda, setting the stage. That's the exact words that I used. And my reason for doing so is that I do believe that we are literally on the eve of a new phase in one important aspect of the work of the UN as a whole, and that is its development agenda. And I thought that given all the preparatory work that has gone into this, including, as you know, a report released by a panel convened by the Secretary General, it is time for member states to have a say in how they see this development agenda being shaped and ultimately being launched. So that was the main reason behind the selection of this theme. As you know, with all themes, it's just a mere set of words put together. So one has to go about developing modalities to elaborate on that particular theme. And in my case, I identified 3 high-level events and also 3 thematic debates. And they cover a wide range of issues, including women, the young, or some of you would say youth, but as you know, within the UN context, youth means something specific. That is, it covers the segment of the population between 16 and 24. And I thought that since we are supposed to be forward-looking, we can't neglect the segment of the population that's younger than 16. Hence my own corruption of the normal UN terminology of youth. So I said the young, which is intended to, the idea there is to capture the entire segment of young people. For those of you who follow the RIA Plus 20 process, you are also keenly aware that there is now widespread acceptance that it's not possible for governments to do everything on their own. So civil society become important and will be an important segment or sector going forward. So that's one of the areas that I'd like to look at. Of course, governance issues are also important. So I'll be doing something in the area of human rights and the rule of law. Given that my country and a number of my colleagues have a keen interest in this, I'm also looking at the area of South-South cooperation, triangle cooperation, and of course ICT for development. And then in the area of the thematic debates, I'd be looking at partnerships. Again, that's one of the things that came out of the Rio process, that we do need to look at how partnerships can further not only the UN agenda as a whole, but particularly the development agenda. I did introduce a terminology which I hope you're familiar with when I talk about stable and peaceful societies. But what exactly does that mean? I think the more traditional formulation is countries emerging from Dr. Joseph, help me out here. Countries emerging from fragile states, yes, of course, and post-conflict. That's what I was searching for. Yes, but I'm told that now it has a broader context, and the idea of stable and peaceful societies not only look at these post-conflict situations, but, and this is peculiar not only to my region, but it's certainly one concern, the idea of crime and its impact on development. So that's one of the things that I'll be looking at going forward. Let me stop here. I'm prepared to answer your questions, and I'll certainly do my best on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Last week in my statement, I did highlight a couple of priorities, one of which was on reform, and not only of the organ that you have just selected or pointed out, but also of the General Assembly itself and some of the other subsidiary bodies like ECOSOC. At the end of the day, though, we are in a member-driven organization, and try as he, I'm using he in this case because I'm male, try as he might, the president still is at the mercy, the president of the General Assembly is still at the mercy of the member states. And on a topic such as reform, where there's a will, as you know, there is a way. And if member states do not intend to move in one step on the question of reform as a whole and of the Security Council in particular, then there's very little the president can do. Having said that, though, I have indicated at the very start to the membership that I do intend to take up the issue of Security Council reform. As you know, there's an ongoing process. It is currently, I wouldn't say stalled, but not much has happened over the past year. So one of the things that we do need to do is to get that back on track and then see where we go from there. In my view, when one is the president of the General Assembly, one sets aside national issues. In fact, one ought to set aside regional issues as well. That is not to say I'm completely divorced of the priorities of both my country and my region. But I don't think one can effectively, and again, these are just my personal views, it has no bearing on any particular presidency. I don't think one can be effective in discharging his or her duties as President of the General Assembly if one seeks to champion your national and or regional issues. I think you have to take as a starting point the so-called global issue. It is not possible for the President of the General Assembly to deal with all the issues, hence the need to identify priorities. I have done that, and I'm happy to go over them with you. But beyond that, you don't necessarily come in and set the agenda. The agenda of the General Assembly is there. It will be there. It was there last year. It is there this year, and it will be there next year. There are 167 items on the agenda for this 60th session. There's a lot to be done, and you simply can't just ignore parts of it, some of it, none of it, all of it. You have to go through that agenda to complete the work. Otherwise, I'm sure historians like yourself would say he was a failed president, and that is not something that someone will ever say about me.